Hi, and welcome to Tasty Tuesday, brought to you by Transition Nutrition and Fitness Coaching. I'm Angie, and I'm here every Tuesday to bring you a new and delicious whole food, plant-based recipe that you can incorporate into your family's weekly menu. Today, we are going to be doing a twist on a traditional Spanish tortilla. Unlike a Mexican tortilla, which is a flat bread-like recipe, the Spanish tortilla is made up traditionally with eggs, potatoes, garlic, and onion. Today's version will be whole food plant-based, which means no eggs and no oil. But the recipe came out so good that my husband, who actually was stationed in Spain for several years, loves this traditional Spanish tortilla just as much as the original. So let's get started. To start the recipe, you're going to need to wash and peel about 1,100 grams. And this is a recipe where I always measure it, and it's measured in grams simply because it is a Spanish recipe that I've adapted, so I needed to convert them into grams to make sure I got it right. And I do measure it because potatoes can vary in size, onions can vary in size, and if you want it to make sure it turns out perfect every time, the best way to do that is to measure your ingredients. I have a pot of boiling water on the stove to which I'm going to add the 1,100 grams of mandolin sliced, and I use an OXO mandolin to slice the potatoes because you want them to all be the same thickness so they cook uniformly. So here are my potatoes. I've already washed them, peeled them, and mandolin sliced them into a little less than 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to add those to the pot of boiling water, and they're going to cook for about 10 to 12 minutes until they are fork tender. You don't want to overcook them or they will fall apart when you're trying to make your tortilla, but they do need to be fork tender. Take a fork and just kind of stir them a little bit in the water, and we'll get those boiling. While your potatoes are boiling, you want to brown 1/2 of a red onion and 1/2 of a white onion, a large one, in with 5 cloves of minced garlic. Now I'm going to use just a tiny bit of vegetable stock to keep it all moving nicely in the pan. I'm using a scan pan, which is non-stick, and we'll be using it for the entire recipe. So I want to make sure I don't get too much stuck to the bottom, or my tortilla will have that stuck to the top when I go to flip it. So we're going to heat this pan up, and then we're going to saute our 5 cloves of garlic, large cloves, 1/2 of a large white onion, and 1/2 of a large red onion. Now that the veggie stock is nice and hot, we're going to add our 1/2 of white onion and our 1/2 of red onion and our garlic, 5 large cloves minced, to the pan. These are going to saute until the onion starts to turn translucent and becomes a little bit soft. Now you will be cooking the tortilla afterwards, so the onion doesn't have to be cooked completely through, but you do want it to be mostly translucent before we add it to the remaining ingredients. Usually this takes between 3 and 5. Now that our potatoes have finished cooking, I've drained them and poured some cold water over them. I also have measured out my 300 grams of chickpea flour. I make my own chickpea flour. I have a Vitamix, and I can just put the whole chickpeas, the dried ones, right in there and make the flour, and it stays nice and fresh. To the 300 grams of chickpea flour, I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt and 1/4 teaspoon of black salt, or kalanamak. Now you cannot skip this step. The black salt is absolutely necessary to mimic the egg-like flavor that it makes up the tortilla. The traditional tortilla has a lot of eggs. We're going to whisk those dry ingredients together. And now I'm going to take the onion and the garlic that I sauteed over on the stove, and I'm going to add this to the chickpea salt mixture. I'm going to keep this pan because we're going to use this pan again in just a minute to cook our tortilla. To this mixture, I'm going to add slowly about 400 milliliters of water. And I say slowly because you want it to resemble a thin to medium pancake batter texture before you add the potatoes in. And it usually takes almost the whole 400 milliliters of water. Especially if you measure your flour out and measure all the other ingredients, it will be the same. That's still too thick, so I'm going to continue adding water until I get that thinner pancake consistency. You want to add it a little bit at a time so it doesn't get too clumpy. That's just about the perfect consistency, a thick to thinner pancake batter consistency. Now we're going to add our cooked potatoes to this mixture. Once we have them in, we're going to stir and blend well. Now, some of your potatoes are going to break up a little bit, and that is perfectly fine because once we put them into the pan, they're going to bake into the form of the tortilla, no matter if they're a little broken up or not. We just don't want mashed potato tortilla. So once we have it incorporated and you make sure that all of the potatoes are coated, we're going to take that pan and move back over to the stove. All right, now we're going to reheat our pan, but this time only to medium heat, because we're going to cook the tortilla on one side for about 10 minutes before we flip it. And we don't want it to burn. So we're going to put this on a medium heat, and I'm going to use just a little bit of vegetable stock to get those little browned bits going in the middle that are left over from the onion and garlic. Then I'm going to take my potato mixture and pour it right into my pan. You do need a pan that has a lid for this recipe. We'll make sure we get all of that potatoey goodness in there. Once you have it in the pan, you're going to smooth it down so that it takes the shape of the bottom of the pan. This is what gives it that classic Spanish tortilla shape, and it will cook almost similar to a thick hash brown type consistency or pancake or omelet type consistency. So we have that all smoothed down. You want to try to get it as level as possible. Then we're going to place our lid on and we're going to set the timer for 10 minutes. And we'll be back. After your 10 minutes is up, you remove the cover, and I use a spatula just to go around the edge of the tortilla to make sure none of the pieces are stuck. Here comes the tricky part. You're going to take a platter the same size as the pan and put it on top of the tortilla pan. Then, very gently, you're going to flip the pan and then take the tortilla and scrape it back in to cook the other side. This one got a little bit brown, which is okay, but maybe 9 minutes depending on the heat of your stove. Just make sure you check it every so often. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit, put the lid back on, and we'll come back in another 10 minutes. So to remove the tortilla from the pan, you simply do the same process you did as when you flipped it. Here's what our finished tortilla looks like. And now we'll take a look at what it looks like once it's plated. Here we have our finished tortilla plated with some nice green beans, some fresh carrots, some sour cream, and some salsa. You could also serve it with ketchup if you prefer. I want to give you a really nice close-up look of the depth of layers of the potatoes and how beautiful the slices look when it's finished. It is just so beautiful. Thank you for watching today, as usual, and if you like these videos, please remember to hit that thumbs up as it really helps us, and hit that subscribe button too. And remember to share it with your friends, because as soon as we hit that 500 subscriber mark, we're going to have another great giveaway, and maybe you'll be the lucky winner this time. And as always, remember, plants are the best medicine.